Very welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So see if I can share my screen. Okay, welcome everybody, and thanks for having me here, presenting my paper. I hope you can see the presentation. So I'm going to talk about it, gender policy and intimate partner violence in Colombia. As you all know, intimate partner violence is it's a major problem, and it's common across the world. The main victims are probably the women that are exposed to the violence, but the other victims are the children and maybe the family at large. But then you have a lot of social and economic problems as well following this. So it's a big issue, but until the 90s, it was, at least in the international community and globally, not considered a major problem. It was like, it's a question about the family matter. So it's, it was first in the 90s that the international community recognized intimate partner violence as a problem. And then early 90s, the UN had a big meeting where they had a grand declaration on the elimination of violence against women. This was in 93. And the WHO put violence against women or intimate partner violence on its agenda in 1996. So it's pretty recent. And actually, if you remember the Millennium Development Goals, which were supposed to have been reached in the year 2000, there was nothing about intimate partner violence in them. But they are in the Sustainable Development Goals. They're included. So what I do in this paper, I try to evaluate if the gender policies initiated by UN has had an impact. Of course, I have to narrow down the question quite a lot. So I narrow it down to Colombia, and I focus on a period between 2010 and 2015, which is—
Excuse me, Dick.
Yeah.
Are you changing slides? Because right now we only see the—
Yeah, I'm not changing. No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, so
sorry about that.
This is a brief background. Between 2010 and 2015, which is because there was an increased effort from 2008 to reduce intimate partner violence. Okay. I just want to emphasize also that I'm not claiming that these policies were initiated originally by the UN. I mean, the gender policies, they were really initiated by women activist groups and so on. Okay, so I'll first give you a brief background on intimate partner violence in Colombia, and then I'll talk a bit about earlier studies, and then about methods, data, and results. Okay, there was a very important meeting in Belém in Brazil in 1994, when a lot of countries, most countries in the Americas met, and they actually signed an international treaty that criminalized all forms of violence against women. And Colombia signed this in 1995. And after that, Colombia and most of the other countries on the American continent started formulating policies and laws that's supposed to protect women, protect women's rights in general, and protect them against intimate partner violence. In Colombia and in many other countries, this was a very slow and uneven process. And the government report in 2013 concluded that it had not had any real impact. And one reason was that there was really it was not really taken seriously, and the laws were not enforced, and so on. Another reason was that some of the laws were really flawed, and they had put women in battered women in a weaker position than before. So there was sort of an act of domestic violence had to be reported by the victim to be prosecuted. It was like this in Sweden as well before, in the 70s, but they introduced it in the year 2000. And then the victim could stop the process, and the accused might not go to prison, and there could be reconciliation, so they could agree without going to court. And of course, this put a lot of pressure on the battered women. So these things had to change. So in 2008, in connection with the launching of a UN campaign called Unite to End Violence Against Women, Colombia changed a number of policies. And this initiative by the UN was due to the fact that they recognized that there was little progress across countries, when it came to reducing intimate partner violence. And it was at this time they created UN Women, for instance, which is a UN agency responsible for women's rights. So it was a major effort. Okay, so what happened in Colombia? Well, they passed and changed a number of laws, particularly in 2008 and 2011. They removed this thing about domestic violence and the victim reporting the crime. And according to lawyers in Colombia, this constituted major change. They also changed the government agency that was supposed to monitor gender equality and so on, and made it as an institution under the president directly. And then they developed a national plan in 2004 to 10 or 2008, 2009, that included a whole chapter on intimate partner violence with a number of actions. And then you have a national agenda policy that came, and it included 67 actions, and there were 17 government agencies involved. And I think, with things from collaboration with donors and civil society to all sorts of activities. And one important thing was that it was supposed to, all the departments were supposed to implement, the departments of the provinces in Colombia, supposed to have their own gender policies. Okay. What I do, I look at these gender policies in general. Earlier studies that I looked at prevention have a different focus, I think. I haven't seen anybody doing the same thing as I do. In Africa, intimate partner violence became, got high on the agenda when they realized that it was highly correlated with HIV. So there've been some programs in Africa. They intervene in one community, like a neighborhood in Kampala in Uganda, or some villages, and they try to change the social norms. So two famous ones are the Share trial and Sasa. There are several, and they have seen an impact on intimate partner violence. And then there are several studies on very specific interventions, like entertainment education, that's like soap operas, or changes in the women's education, or cash transfers. And then you have another set of studies that look at laws, divorce laws, and criminalization of domestic violence, and so on. And the results here are in general positive towards an impact. Not all don't find that there is a positive impact, but a number of them. However, the weakness of these studies, although important, is that it's widely recognized now that to reduce IPV, you need to do a lot of things at the same time. There are many interconnected drivers, and prevention requires comprehensive strategies. So you have a combination of laws and national policy programs and so on that includes all the stakeholders. So that's why I'm focusing on these gender policies. Okay. So my research question is then, what was the impact of this renewed effort by the UN, that's Unite, and the collaboration with the government of Colombia on intimate partner violence? And to address this question, I need to identify the causal effect. So what I do is I use the fact that in Colombia, the central government passes the laws, but the departments, that is the provinces, they implement many of them. They are quite independent in many ways, and the governors or the governments of the departments are to a large extent responsible to the people that live there. So in 2010, 2011, there were only 9 departments that had a gender policy. And a few were in the pipeline of adopting one. And only one department adopted a gender policy in 2010. So what I do, I assume that departments' gender policy are more efficient in implementing national gender policies than the others, that the gender policies have an impact. I based information on a study by the Spanish Development Agency, which really scrutinized all the departments in 2010, 2011. And then I looked at the information on the website and so on. And these policies are long documents, but they list a lot of actions, like they should communicate to the public twice a year about the null tolerance about the IPV. There should be vacation programs in the schools. They should create a number of shelters. They should train the relevant employees, and they should implement different programs that support female victims. You can easily understand that just having a law that intimate partner violence is a crime might not help, because what shall the woman do if she's battered? She's got to go somewhere, so you need a shelter, and then you need to have a rapid process where you actually grab the guy and so on. So you need a lot of things to have this impact. Here is the main specification. I use a method called difference and differences. I don't know if you all know econometrics or statistics, but so I'll be very brief here. The dependent variable is if the woman is reported on having experienced intimate partner violence during the last year. So I is the individual, D is the department, and T is the year, and it's either 2010 or 2015 in this formulation, in this model. And then I have a number of individual and household controls that I'll talk about later. And then I have some what we call department dummies, or fixed effects in economics jargon, that is an intercept for each department. And then I have a variable that includes civilian deaths due to armed conflict. It's well known that civil wars and armed conflict actually lead to more intimate partner violence. There's several studies showing this. I studied a period when armed conflict declined drastically. So I control for this. The important variables are the policy and the post. Post is a variable that is 0 in 2010, before the so-called treatment, before the policies were implemented, and it's 1 after. And then I have a variable called pol, which is the policies. So departments that had the policy are 0 in 2010 and 1 in 2015, and the others are 0 all the time. And the coefficient of interest is beta 2, which shows whether there was an effect or not. Okay. In addition, I do run some more regression to look at some other outcomes and relate to IPV, and I talk more about them later. Okay, so my data, I use demographic and health surveys, and these are nationally representative surveys financed by the US and carried out for a lot of developing countries, roughly every 5th year. And they have a lot of detailed data about, about the individuals, education, occupation, age, when they were born, and so on, that I use. Then I have, in most of these surveys, or many at least, there is a module on domestic violence. And in these modules, they ask specific questions to the women if they ever or during the last year were hit by the guy. For instance, did he push or shake you? Did he hit you with his hand? Did he kick you? And I have 7 of those questions that are common to both surveys. Then I have 1 question on sexual violence, which is if he physically forced you to have sexual intercourse when you didn't want to. So those are so that's the variables measuring intimate partner violence. And it's a binary indicator. If they answer yes to any of the question, it indicates there is violence. Some people like to sum them and so on, but that's not really what the development this module thought about it. because we don't know the intensity and so on. We know just that it occurred. So it's a 0-1. Then I used demographic and health surveys from earlier years to check for parallel trends, because it's important that the departments that adopted the policies and the others had the same development before the introduction of the policies. Okay, economists always want to make sure that the assumptions made to draw conclusions here hold, and so I have just one graph to show you that they seem to hold, and this is the parallel trends assumption. So you can see the red line here are the departments that did not implement intimate policy, and the others are those that implemented. And the first, the DHS in the first observation is 2005. And you can see the decline in the same way. And you can also see that the intimate partner violence was higher in the departments that implemented the policies. About 23% of the women reported being exposed to violence past year in 2005. And you can see the decline. And you can also see the change from 2010 to 2015, which come out from the regressions. I also look at a longer period from 2000, and I do some so-called placebo tests where I pretend that the policies were introduced in 2005 or 2010, and there's no impact. Okay, so this is the main result. So this is for all women who currently or formerly were in union. You know, they're married or they lived with somebody, and there it's about partner violence the previous year. And you can see that first that I have about 56,000 observations, and I have here I report just physical and sexual violence, the combined effect. Actually, most women that are exposed to sexual violence were also exposed to physical violence. So the difference is not big. You can also see the mean in 2010. So it's about 20%. 20% of women were exposed to violence. Now I estimate 4 equations where I introduce the control step by step to see if they make a big difference. Because of course it's departments at random. You know, there was some reason, so they're different some way. You already saw that violence was more common in the ones that adopted the policies. So I have, if you want interested in all the controls, you can see them listed down there. I have ethnicity, if the father beat mother, which has a strong impact on whether the woman will be exposed to violence when she gets married, age of sex encounter, education attainments, and so on. The coefficient of interest is the one post and policy. So it's minus 0.4 roughly. And this means that 4%, it's a decline of 4 percentage points in the departments with the policy. And so you can see the baseline is it's 20. So it's sort of a 20% decline. You can also see that the change, if you control for this, there's no change in intimate partner values across between 2010 and 2015. So these models captures the whole change, the whole decline that is observed. Okay. The specification of the model, or the choice of the departments that had a policy and did not have a policy, somewhat arbitrary. So I check whether I have a more narrow measure changes the results, or a broader one. And the broader one include the departments that had gender offices of some size, because some had gender policies or policies that affected women before. And there are some, you know, results are weaker for the narrow one and a bit stronger for the broader measure. Okay. To try to provide support for these results, or try to understand why the policies had an impact, I'll run some regressions. The most obvious one would be to look at the attitudes towards violence. So they ask questions whether to the women here, not to the men, unfortunately. And this, I think there was something went wrong with the survey, so there's no male module in the male data, no data questions to the men. So they asked them if it's acceptable for the husband to beat his wife if she goes out without telling him, neglects her children, argues with the husband, refuses to have sex, and so on. And here I use, again, a binary variable. What you can see that there is a negative effect in the departments that are treated. But you could see it's a positive effect, a fairly big coefficient in the others, or in the post coefficient, which means that overall attitudes towards violence became more popular, if you want to call it, which is a bit odd. I don't know how to explain this. One reason could be that the mean is very low. It's only 3% answers yes. So it could be just coincidence. But if I run the regression with each question, I get the same result. It might be due to the decrease in the armed conflict, and a lot of the, maybe many of the, or some of the soldiers, former soldiers, are part of the survey, but I don't know. But there was a difference, at least, between the departments with the policy and the others. Then I look at lives with a partner, or if they don't, you can see that in the departments with a policy, clearly more women live with the partner. And you can see there are fewer that plan to divorce or separate. You can also see that plans to divorce due to HPV is lower in the departments with less intimate partner violence, as expected. But you can also see that many more women who plan to divorce claim that it's intimate partner violence that is highly significant and a large number. And finally, I ask if I look for if they ask for help from official authority, from the police, from the court, or from other instances. And actually, there's no difference between the department, and there's a small decline. So the results are not sort of completely consistent, but they do show that there was an impact, clearly. Finally, I look at another aspect of intimate partner violence. Among the questions about intimate partner violence, one question is if the husband accuses the woman of being unfaithful. I have not included it in my measure of intimate partner violence, because I think it's well, I can discuss this, but I don't think it should be there. There are, of course, many reasons why a guy might accuse his wife of being, or a woman being unfaithful. It could be motivated. It could be just that he's very uncertain, or it could be he uses it as an argument to use physical violence. We don't know. But what I know is there is a very strong correlation between accusation of unfaithfulness and domestic violence. So I try to use this to see if there is a change in this correlation. And here is a figure that might look odd to some of you. It's called predictive margins, but I'll explain it. So the first, you see in 2010, the blue and the red shows the impact where for departments without with the policy and without the policy, when when the woman says that she's not accused of unfaithfulness. So partner violence is a bit over 12% in this group, and there's little change between 2010 and 2015. And then on top we have what happens when the woman is accused of being unfaithful. So first you see that in the departments where they have policy, it's slightly more common. Violence is slightly more common than the others. But there's a clear change in the correlations over time. So in 2015, there are clearly less and significantly less women that they're accused of being unfaithful, but it doesn't result, or is not correlated with violence, physical violence. So I think this is an indication in the change of behavior, maybe in the change of attitudes. Okay, so let me conclude. So to summarize, in the department with the gender policy, physical violence decreased from 20 to 16%, but it stayed at about 18% in the other departments. Sexual violence decreased in both departments from 5.6 to 3.4 in those with policy, and a bit less in the others. And if you take an overall, you can say that the physical and sexual violence decreased by about 20% in Department of Gender Policy. So I think that the Colombian government's effort, combined with with support of the UN, there are a lot of donors involved here, and some of the donors work directly with the departments to formulate these policies. The policies seem to have an impact. It hasn't ended intimate partner violence. It's still a major problem, but it seems to have an impact. But then, of course, I don't show exactly what caused the decline. So it would be nice to dig much deeper into this. One has to go and travel around and really have some inside information, because there's so many activities and there are over 30 departments, and they have, that they are different. And it would also be nice to see what happened in other countries. I haven't done that. So thank you.